Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert, and we're back for another round. If you are interested in starting a side hustle to supplement your income and also give you a little bit of financial diversification, you've come to the right place because that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this is going to be more of a Q&A type installment today. I'm going to go over a couple of concepts, but if you have a question, get in the chat, type in your question, and I will do my best to help you out. I am a little bit under the weather today, so I apologize in advance if I have to sort of block out a coughing fit or anything like that. That's just current year, I guess. Everybody was out of all the respiratory illnesses for a while, and then now they're back with a vengeance. But there are 4 of you here, so you're awesome. Thank you for being here. Yes, so we have covered on this series so far, we have covered some concepts about marketing. We have covered some concepts about the marketing funnel. That was the first kind of thing we did. And we talked about some of the basic ideas. And something I'd like to lead off with today is that if you're looking for an idea, okay, you're in the idea stage, you don't know what you are going to do as a side hustle, and you're trying to get options, okay? A great way to think, there's 2 sort of guidelines that I want to give. And the first one is, number 1, start with something traditional. Start with something that when you mention it to people, you say, I'm thinking of doing this. They know what that is, okay? There are obviously some types of entrepreneurship where you start up innovative type companies, okay? They do new and exciting things that people don't necessarily know what it is when you mention it to them. Either they're very, very niche, or you're coming up with something completely new. You might even be inventing the names for it, okay? And there is definitely a place for that, okay? But to try and give yourself every chance and make this as easy as possible for it to take off and be a success, usually a good guideline is, a good litmus test is that you pick something where you can tell your friends, your family, people in general about it, and they instantly understand what that is. They understand how it works. They understand why someone would need that. And if you choose something like that, the great thing is that you don't have to then educate your potential customers. You don't have to educate your potential market segment and find your audience, because it's already established. It's already a thing. Everybody already knows about it. Okay. So that's the first kind of guideline that I would recommend. Anyone who's looking to add a side hustle, and you could do a whole bunch of different things. You don't know what to pick. First, run it through that test, okay? It's a known, established thing that there's a lot of awareness for. So when you put your message out into the world, which you will inevitably do in some way, shape, or form, you're going to be you're going to be communicating your marketing message. You're going to be saying, "Hey, I can do this. I don't charge very much. I do a good job." You know, if you're selling a product or service, you're going to be putting that out into the world. When you do, it's really, really advantageous if most people who see that message understand immediately what it is, why it's good, why they would want to pay for it. Okay, that's the first guideline. The second guideline, that I would use as a litmus test to run your options through when you're thinking of an idea for what you might do for a side hustle is to start with what you have, okay? We can all do many, many things, okay? For example, you are wondering what you would do. You're trying to get options. You're trying to get ideas. Some of those options are things that you could start tomorrow because you already know how it works. You have everything you need to get started. You don't need to add any knowledge. You don't need to add any assets like tooling or equipment or real estate or anything like that. You can start with what you have, okay? An example of that would be, just off the top of my head, somebody, I think I talked about this last week, somebody in the construction business. If you are a handyman or something like that, you already have your own tools. You already know how to fix kitchens and roofs and basements and, whatever you're thinking of doing, you could start that tomorrow. If somebody showed up at your door today and said, I'd like to pay you $1,000 to fix my kitchen, and you had all the tools already, you already had the knowledge for what to do, and you knew exactly how it works, that would be what I'm talking about. It's something that you can start today or start tomorrow without having to learn a bunch of things and buy a bunch of things and get a bunch of other things in place. Okay. An example that does not fit or does not pass that litmus test would be, say, starting a restaurant. Okay. Let's say you are not a chef. You are not someone who has worked in the restaurant business before. Maybe you cook as a hobby in your kitchen. I don't know. But you say, oh yeah, I could start a restaurant. Well, in order to start a restaurant, you would have to know how to run a restaurant if you've never done it before. So there's some learning involved. You would have to buy or lease or obtain in some way the physical assets, the property and the fully stocked kitchen and all the inventory and all that in order to get started, which you don't have, right? And there's also maybe the whole licensing, how do you legally set up a restaurant? And it's you have a license to make and sell food. And, the health inspector has said you're good to go and open your restaurant and sell food to people. Those are things that you don't have in place now, right? So in order to start that, you obviously have to jump through a bunch of hoops. You'd have to spend some money. You'd have to learn a few things and do a whole bunch of work. So that idea, for example, does not pass this test. It's maybe a bit of an extreme example, but hopefully everybody understands the idea, okay? So you run it through these two filters, okay? That would be my recommendation. That's something I've seen based on seeing a lot of people do this kind of thing, and there's a lot of advantages to do it. So just to summarize, rule number one, if everybody remembers, rule number one was, what was rule number one? Rule number one was being able to tell somebody about your idea and they instantly recognize that they understand how it works. It's a known quantity. They see the value. No further explanation is necessary to understand what you're doing. Second test is to be able to start with what you have. If you have access to a vehicle and you want to be an Uber driver or something like that, there you go. You can get started today or tomorrow. You don't need to add money or add knowledge or anything like that. Okay, so that's what I wanted to lead off with. There are 19 people here. You guys are awesome. Get in the chat. Let's do some questions. I really don't have too much of a plan beyond what I've already done, what I've already said so far. So when I do my regular job and employment live stream on Wednesdays, it's pretty much all a Q&A. And I like that because I could make those go on forever. As long as you guys are here with questions, I can roll with it. This, for example, I was thinking we would try a bit more of that today if you guys have questions. So you should be able to see the chat to the right of the video. Get in the chat. Let me know if you got any questions and I'll be happy to help. In the meantime, while we're waiting for the questions to roll in, if I can get my screen share, here we go. Okay, something else I wanted to show today that's very important. Okay. And that is, if you're doing a side hustle or any type of entrepreneurial type venture, marketing is going to be probably your number one concern. Okay. Especially if you're doing the thing that I just recommended, where you're starting with what you have. Okay. So if everybody, I'm not sure if everybody's aware of this, but the different areas of business, you've got marketing and then you've got operations. And those are going to be the two most important areas of doing any kind of side hustle. And maybe I'll go back here for a second. We're not getting any questions. I want to say a shout out to all my members and to my Patreons. You guys are awesome. Thank you for the support. That's really cool. And yeah, let's talk about that. So there's different areas of business, right? There's all kinds. There's finance, there's HR, there's economics, there's all kinds of different stuff. However, for what we are doing, like I said, marketing and operations are going to be the two most important by far. Okay. Operations is when you do the thing that you're doing. So for example, if you were going to do the Uber driver idea, everything to do with driving people around, that's operations. So maintenance of a vehicle, procurement of a vehicle, being able to navigate around the city, being able to charge people for the service, all of that, anything to do with driving, that would be operations. Okay. So if you don't know the lingo, that's what operations means. Anything to do with driving, that's the operations side of it. Marketing, there's sort of three sort of functions in marketing, and it's all to do with basically selling. Okay. If you do this the way I would recommend, operations is not really going to be a problem for you because you're starting with what you have. You're starting with what you can do today. So there's not a lot of research and development for doing the operations. The biggest focus is going to be marketing, and there are three parts to marketing. Okay. Marketing is, first of all, figuring out who your customers or your potential customers are going to be. What types of people would want an Uber driver? Where do you find those people? Okay. Are these people at the airport? Are these people that, I don't know much about Uber, but maybe they couldn't get a regular Uber driver through Uber, so they're going to, outside of it to someone like you. You have to figure out who it is that you're targeting, who would want what you're selling. Okay, that's the first step. So the first part of three, that's the first thing that marketing does. You identify who you're trying to sell to. The second part of marketing is then, now that you've identified who you're trying to sell to, you've got to figure out what the marketing message is going to be, what you're going to say to these people in some way, shape, or form that will get them to want to do business with you. Okay, so this could take the shape of an advertisement. Okay, like a billboard you walk by on the street, or an ad on a web page, something that communicates something to presumably somebody that's part of your potential audience, right? So what would you have to say to them? A lot of times you would just be saying what you do. It's like, Uber driver, this is my rate. Call this number, something like that, right? That could be an example of a marketing message, right? You figure that all you have to do is get that information in front of your target audience, and that's all you need, right? So that's the second part of marketing. First part was figuring out who your audience is. Second part is figuring out what you have to communicate to them to get them to do business with you, okay? And then the third and final part of marketing is, now that you know who your audience is, now that you know what you have to say to them, is the channel over which you're going to go. So now that you know what you have to get these people to understand, how are you going to do that? Are you going to do a website? Are you going to advertise your services on a billboard right next to a kiosk at the airport? There are many ways to communicate that message. You want to do it in such a way that most people see it and it makes the best impression. So those three things together, that's marketing. And that's going to be the primary focus of any side hustle that most people will be doing. Okay, Rock Step 44. Thank you for starting to use the chat. I didn't want to have to fill any more dead air. Rockstep 44 says, what if your full-time employer doesn't want you to have a side hustle? Excellent point. By definition, most employers, if you have a day job, most employers, if you were to ask them, or you were to inform them that you intend to do this, pretty much the default position of all of them is they would not want you to do a side hustle. Because the logic is that now your loyalty is divided between your day job and your side hustle. And so for example, if they ask you to stay overtime or they ask you to work a little harder, you would resist it because, you don't want to blow all your energy and time and effort on your day job. You also have your side hustle to consider, right? The other part of it is that if you have a side hustle that gives you a measure of financial security, right? Because if something happens at your day job, let's say you're laid off or something like that, you would still have your side hustle. You would have income coming in with your side hustle. And if you do this right, you may be, if your side hustle is scalable, which means that you can easily ramp it up, it could even replace your day job income. And so that means that your day job is less important to you than it would be if it was your sole source of income. Okay? If your boss told you you had to work harder or you're fired, that would carry a lot more weight if you didn't have a side hustle, right? Because that's your only source of income. If you obviously you have a couple of things going on the side and you've got money coming in from different sources, you've got different revenue streams, then it's not as important to you. Right? And you might even be able to walk away from it and still be okay, certainly temporarily. Okay. So by definition, your employer will not want you to do a side hustle. So usually how people do this is they don't volunteer the information that they are doing a side hustle in the first place. That's usually how this goes. Okay. Depending on what you're doing, sometimes, your employer finds out, and some questions might be asked, right? And they could be uncomfortable. If it were me, I would downplay it all, okay? If your employer is curious or is asking you questions, a couple of things here. First of all, and I have to think twice before I make blanket statements, about like, what if you're in health, Medicare? What if you're in, medicine? I'm trying to think through like all the possibilities here, but generally, if someone were to ask me, if an employer at my day job was to ask me, do you have a side hustle and how serious is it? First of all, you need to recognize that, you're not in a court of law. You don't have to disclose details of your personal life outside of your job to your employer, okay? I mean, depending where you are in the world, there might be local laws different local laws that apply, but generally, it's not like you're in a court of law or you're giving a deposition and you have to answer with the full, complete truth. That's not the situation. So just be aware of that, okay? You would be well within your rights to say, well, that's confidential, or you could just downplay it and say, I'm not really doing it. It was kind of an idea, I was toying with, but no, I'm not really doing anything. If it were me, I would say something like that. I would deflect it, diffuse it, and, you know what I mean? It's none of their business anyway. You don't owe them any information. It's like them coming to you and saying, how many children do you intend to have? It's like, that's none of your business. And quite frankly, it shouldn't matter, even if it was, I don't have to disclose that. They don't have the powers of God over you and are able to control your personal life. Okay. Some employers in some places kind of think they can. I've had some brushings with that in the past, but doesn't matter what they think, they're deluded. There's no right that you have to disclose this. So I would downplay it. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't say like none of your business, have like a really hostile response. I would just say, no, it's kind of something I was toying with, an idea I was thinking, but you know what? It seems like a lot of work and I'm probably not going to do it. So I would just do that if it were me. Serena Blue says, I want to thank you very much for all the videos you've made on how to ace a job interview and many other videos. I got laid off suddenly 2 years ago. I didn't have any other income for 1.4 years. Yeah, that's unfortunate. It continues. Then I got hired at half the salary I was making prior. I don't have money to invest in a side income. Is there a way to start something with very little money? Well, this is what I'm saying. This is the part of like saying, start with what you have. Okay, because the other aspect of this is that you don't need any capital to start up your business, okay? Your side hustle. I recommend that you pick an idea or you pursue something that doesn't require any startup capital. for multiple reasons. There's multiple reasons that this is good. I have seen, and I said this last time, but I've seen I've worked with many startup founders and many small business owners who, they chose something that, like, in order to get it going, to get it like off the ground, they had to spend basically their life savings and then go out and borrow a whole ton of other extra capital on top of it. And the problem with that is that buys you the ability to roll the dice once. Okay? This is your plan. In order to make it happen, you're going to need this. So you go out and you spend a ton of money putting all that stuff in place. And you just pray that your plan works. Okay? Now, the reality is that if you're jumping into something you've never done before, the deck is highly stacked against you. There's a lot of things you can do. Some are less of a risk than others, right? If you're starting with something that you've already done and that you could start tomorrow, well, you've got two advantages right off the bat. Number one, you know what you're doing. You've done it before, right? Now you're just maybe doing it for money. Instead of doing it like the construction idea, instead of like helping a few neighbors fix their house out of the goodness of your heart, just being neighborly. Now you want to do that, but for money, right? To people who aren't neighbors, right? Now, the marketing is a stretch. You've never tried to sell your services before. So that's the bit of the risky area. But the operations side is not risky because you already know how to fix kitchens or whatever we were talking about. You already know how to do that. You've already done it. You have everything you need to do it. You could start tomorrow, and it's really not much of a stretch. You know what you're doing. So the operations side is a lot less risky. Okay. So number one has a higher chance of success because it's less risky. And number two, you don't have to spend any real money to get it started. Okay. The only money you would have to spend is the marketing, and marketing is what I recommend is you start doing it for free. Like, it doesn't cost anything to start a YouTube channel. It doesn't cost anything to post in groups on social networking or add hashtags to your posts on Twitter or, whatever, like whatever you're doing. There's a lot of stuff you can do for free and reach a lot of people for free. You can go to, like, if it's construction, they might have construction trade shows or events. Usually the real estate industry is trying to sell houses, and the renovation industry is like a big thing. They have events, they have all kinds of stuff you can go to, and that's where you can go and you can meet and interact directly with your would-be customers. So there's all kinds of free stuff you can do. Okay, so this is why I recommend start with what you have. One advantage of that is that you're not spending a lot to start up your business. In fact, I honestly would recommend you try and do it spending nothing. The less you spend, the easier it is, the less risky the whole thing is, the more attempts you can do. If you don't get it perfectly right, things don't go according to plan exactly, the more chances you have. Right? If it takes you $100,000 each time you want to try something, how many of those can you do? You know what I'm saying? I've worked with a lot of people that staked everything on one throw of the dice, and it didn't work. Because if you're jumping into something you've never done before and you don't really know much about, the odds are is that it's not going to work. If you pick something that you've done before that you already have everything you need to get started, like the Uber driving thing. I mean, you can drive a car, right? Maybe even if you had a previous job as a taxi driver or something, in the past, that would be even less of a stretch than become an Uber driver on the side. So these are things to consider. Lino Walker is a regular. Says, the way I used my side hustle, a blog, in interviews was, I'm trying to change careers. I use this site as a portfolio to showcase my internet marketing skills. Okay. It doesn't really sound much like a business. It sounds more like a sort of research project. But yeah, that's interesting. Come on, guys, get in the chat. Let's get some questions going. There's 34 of you guys here. Thank you for being here, by the way. You're all awesome. You're doing some self-improvement. You want to learn. And I find this stuff absolutely magical. I mean, I've said this before, how fun is it me talking about myself? But I mean, I've been on my own for like 10 years. I haven't been an employee for a very long time. I've just been doing essentially entrepreneurship related things. This YouTube channel is kind of just another one of those, right? You just do a thing on your own. I don't have a boss. I do everything entirely on my own terms. And it's great. And the great thing about side hustles is that depending on how you do it, it can be a gateway into that. If you do a very successful side hustle that you can scale up, and replace your income, then you don't need a day job. Now, maybe that appeals to you, maybe it doesn't, but it also, regardless of, if that's something you want to pursue, the option to do that is good in the sense that you have security. Okay. So if something happens at your day job, you get laid off or something else, the company folds, whatever, you would be able to just, even if it's temporary, you might be able to ramp this up and continue as if you had your full income while you're maybe also on the side looking for another day job. Okay. So that's the great thing about this. It can go, any number of different ways. It gives you a lot of options. So yes, Serena Blue says, thank you. You're welcome, Serena. Or Serene. I remember I've heard of the name Serena. So I was saying that, but it's Serene Blue. It's probably more of an alias than a name, maybe, I'm guessing. Anyway, but yes. So coming back to this, there are many different areas of business. Last time we got questions about like the financing side or the accounting side. You don't have to worry about that stuff. Certainly not in the beginning. If you don't bring money in, what does the accounting matter? It doesn't. If you're starting with what you have, you don't have to worry about startup capital. You don't have to worry about finances, and you don't have to worry about all the cliched things that you always hear about. People getting investors, people getting loans, people getting grants. I mean, you can do that stuff. That's the kind of startup world, especially innovative startups, but it's really self-defeating in my experience. There's a lot of disadvantages of doing it that way. Serena Blue, I have watched almost all of your videos, and your videos really helped me with anxiety and surviving. I would hear your voice in my head. Oh, okay. Hopefully that's a good thing. Well, thank you for saying so, Serene Blue. That's good. I'm glad it helped. Yes. Listen, if you're anything like me, business is not that hard. It's really not that big of a challenge compared with other things that people take on. If you want to be a IT person, you want to be a developer. If you want to be an engineer, you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an architect. I mean, all of those things are harder than business. Business is not, really up there requiring an IQ of 200 or anything. As evidenced by probably, if you look around, you can probably see evidence for that. There's some people that might not be the sharpest tools in the shed, and they're in business and they're successful. It really, doesn't take an absolute genius to do. What it does take learning a few principles and then being able to test those principles with your experience when you try things. Okay. One kind of universal thing that has applied to me, and it's applied to the many, many people I've worked with over the years, is that things don't work out in your head or in reality the way it seems like they're going to work out in your head before you've done it, right? We can make our plans, but usually we find that our plans, it doesn't work out like our plans say it should. Instead, it works out some other way. So you really need to try things. And so being able to try things without spending your life savings is very important. That's how you learn stuff. We take the business principles and we apply them to our particular situation in life. And that's the part that you need to experiment with, right? The principles are established, but exactly how they apply to what you're trying to do, That's a big question mark. And nobody can tell you precisely how that's going to go because you're dealing with a unique situation. And even if you get someone who has made a success of the thing you want to do, that was them, and that wasn't right now. So already it's not the same situation, right? Something that might have worked in 2019 might not necessarily work in 2023. And something that might have worked for one person with their particular traits and skills and knowledge might not necessarily work for you with your traits and skills and knowledge, right? So every situation is going to be unique, and that's why you need experience, and that's why you need to be able to try things. And that's why you can't spend $100,000 every time you want to try something. So that's how this stuff works. But if people with jobs, day jobs, doing the daily grind, knew how easy and rewarding this stuff was, they would all be doing it, right? That's something that I've observed. So it is possible to do. If maybe you needed to put, say, 2 or 3 years of effort into it, would that be worth it to you? Okay? Meaning if you started now, you would not see success for 2 to 3 years. Would that be something you're interested in? Because that's a more typical scenario. But at the end of 2 or 3 years, you find something that is a success. It allows you to quit your day job if you want. It allows you to supplement your income, to either replace your income or practically double it because you're doing this on the side. And it gives you security in the sense that you've got 2 different revenue streams so that you're not reliant on any one as a single point of failure to sink you financially. Would that be an acceptable trade-off for you if it took you 2 to 3 years to get that to work? That's a question I think a lot of people need to ask themselves. Okay? A lot of people are going to say yes. It's like, look, I'll risk my effort and my time being wasted for 2 to 3 years. I'm not going to risk my life savings, but if I could risk my time and effort, and maybe have to learn a few things. In 3 years, if at the end of it I come out with what I just described, that would be worth it. For a lot of people, it would be worth it. Time is going to pass. This is how I think of it. Time is going to pass regardless of what you're doing. If you're just sitting on your butt watching TV, or you're trying business ventures and learning as you go, time is going to pass. So it would be great at the end of that time. At least I think it would be great at the end of that time if you could come out with a real formula for success. That this is an alternative to what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You don't have to work for the man like me. You can do your own thing, and it's creatively satisfying and it's rewarding. So anyway, that's my soapbox speech for today. Let's go over to you. Tapiwa? How did you with YouTube and social media as a side hustle? Like how do you do it? How did I do it, or how does one do it? There's a lot of resources on YouTube for how to do YouTube. In my experience, a lot of it is crap, to be perfectly honest with you. People talk about all kinds of fancy metrics and what you got to do. You just have to create something that some people want to watch. That's all you have to do. Whatever that is. That's the only thing that matters. And if it's the only thing you have to do is try and make it better and better quality. What does that mean? That just means the people who watch it need to like it a lot. Now, it doesn't get any more specific than that. That's all you have to do. If you can do that, if you can create one video that does that, that's all you have to do, in my experience. Lina Walker, business also takes tenacity, especially with sales. It's easy to get under the weather when you have one of those days where nothing goes your way. Okay, let me give you an example of sales, okay, just to illustrate a point. In this live stream, I've been trying to sell you guys a product. Did you pick up on it? I haven't mentioned anything and I haven't put any time into it, but it's written right on the screen. I got a couple of things here and there, right? Okay. Now, am I working hard? Am I doing a sales grind? No, I'm not. But the idea is that if you like my stuff enough, and those are kind of exactly what you're interested in learning, people buy them. I don't really have to put too much time into selling them. And I put almost no time into the sales process because it's all automated. It's like, it's an online store. You buy the course and, you pay the money and then you get all the videos and all the materials and then you go through it. It doesn't require my constant attention or effort. So you can do these things your way. Okay. If you are not into that traditional cliche of like a salesperson grinding and, doing personal selling, one customer after another all day long. And, if that's not you, hey, that is some people. There's a lot of extroverts that that's what they enjoy doing. I'm an introvert. I don't enjoy doing that stuff particularly. I could do it if I had to, but I wouldn't really enjoy it. But the great thing about doing your own, like a side hustle, if the side hustle turns into your main thing, is that you get to design this the way you want, right? So, if you're the type of person that's not super into like the personal selling, you don't have to do the personal selling. You just have to figure out a way to deliver value to somebody and communicate that value and have them want to buy it, right? This is a great thing about the real world. There are no barriers. It's not like you're in school and they give you an assignment and you have to do it this way and it has to work like this. It's like, no, this is the real world. You could figure out what works and what works for you. That's a great thing. So I'm not arguing with you, Lino Walker. I mean, you're absolutely right. A lot of businesses, you have to do like a sort of daily grind where you're doing a lot of sales constantly, but it doesn't have to be like that if you can find a solution that doesn't require that. Like the Uber driver thing. I mean, if you set up like a billboard or an internet ad or, whatever message right at the place where a customer would want an Uber driver. So they think, oh, I need an Uber driver. And then they look up and they see, oh, okay, there's one right there. Hey, I'll call the number and or whatever, however it works. It's like you might not have to put any effort into the grind of sales. The sales mechanism is basically having that marketing message in that place and having it say the exact right thing that somebody at that place wants right then. So they see it and they connect the dots and then bam, you've made a sale. It doesn't require any constant manual input from you or effort. So it's possible to do stuff like that. Yvonne, good morning, Bill. I just do a little side hustle with reselling. I buy things at garage sales and resell them with profit locally on Marketplace. Some people do that full time on eBay or Etsy. Yes, I'm aware that exists. I don't know too much about it myself, but it's also a value added thing. You don't just buy something and then resell it. You buy it, you refurbish it, you clean it off, you restore it. You then, when you resell it, it might have been one item in like a pile of junk, so it didn't have its own identifying descriptor. When you resell it, you give all its specifications and, it's not like part of a lot of items. It's its own item. So if somebody is looking for that, you've made it much more discoverable. And that also is a value added operation. So yeah, there's like, you're adding value to it. You're buying something and then you're adding value to it and then you're selling it for a higher price. And people are going to pay the higher price because you have improved the product. So yeah, that's another great example. Kobo Bunny, the secret, stamina and stress management. That's it. Those are the two most important traits, unfortunately. Well, not necessarily. I mean, yes, depending on if you choose something, a certain thing, you might have to have it work that way. But like, for example, the example I just gave of my courses on the screen. I mean, selling those, a lot. I'm selling a lot of those courses, and it doesn't require stamina or that much effort. I just occasionally mention it, and that's it. And they're right on the screen, so I don't have to mention it. And the idea is that all the work where you would have to sort of explain what you're getting and why you should trust me and all this, that's all done indirectly by having a website put up that describes the course and having a ton of free videos. So, presumably if you've seen a lot of them, you like my videos, you want me to go deeper, then, then you're already sold on thinking that information from me would be good, right? So, as I said, you can do it this way, but not necessarily. You can. There's no sort of thing like that you absolutely must need. Vivienne, good morning, Bill. Good morning, Vivienne. I remember you from last time. How did you start? Sorry for the typo. Well, I've started many things. I started a consulting business using the thing that I always talk about in my other live streams, the How to Get a Job live streams, which is basically how to do networking over LinkedIn. Because like I've said a million times, I'm an introvert, and, I don't particularly enjoy going to a lot of events and connecting with people I don't know at events. A lot of people will go to sort of like wine and cheese kind of events and, business type things, and they'll go there and they'll network, they'll schmooze with people. I found it very, very inefficient because there might be 100 people in a room, and you go there and at the end of an hour, you've talked to like 3, so very inefficient. And I just didn't like the whole process. So I did my networking using LinkedIn and connecting to people directly and doing it that way. And I mean, most of that is in the Get Hired course, by the way. It's like how to do that, but for a job. So that's how I started that. And then the YouTube thing, it actually came for me, my YouTube channel. I started it because a few years ago, I did some teaching in the university, in a college, and places like that. And I mean, I'm not a teacher, and I'm certainly not from academia. I'm a private sector person my whole career. But it was something that I was offered the opportunity to do that. So I said, sure, why not? So I just sort of jumped in and did some teaching on the side, and it was good. It was good and it was bad. It was hard to go back into academia. I really did not jive with their whole way of doing things. But it was cool dealing with students. There were some awesome students, and it gives you sort of hope for the future, seeing some really, good young people that kind of have the right attitude, and they're excited about stuff, and they're willing to put forth effort. And so I was teaching various business courses, and what I found was that for some reason, a lot of students, what they really were interested in was how to pass a job interview. Now, that wasn't part of like what I was supposed to teach, but I shared what I knew. And I noticed that's when like all the students, that's when their ears picked up. So I kept sort of answering the same questions over and over and over again. And then I figured, you know what, I might as well make a video or something, so I don't have to always answer the same questions. I could just send people to the video if I don't want to give a 5-minute explanation. So that was the beginning of my YouTube channel. I just made some videos, and I just sent people there. And then that was the whole idea. And then it took a life of its own. And then I put more time into it. So that was how my YouTube channel started. But like, this is a great thing. You're starting like that's another example, by the way, of starting with what you have. It's not like I decided, okay, I'm going to do a YouTube channel. I'm going to do it on sports cars. So I know nothing about sports cars, but I've heard that they're very popular. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to learn about sports cars and try and somehow get content with sports cars in it. It's like, no, I didn't do that. I started with what I had. And it's kind of weird because telling people how to get jobs is not my core competency. It's something I picked up along the way in my career. So it's kind of ironic. I've got a YouTube channel telling people all about how to get a job, and you kind of have to talk about that all the time. But that's how these things begin. You start with what you have, and if, like in my case, I was giving the information to students and I saw how they were interested in it. So that was like a signal to me that, oh, this is something people are interested in, surprisingly. So that's the best way to do things. So when I say, like, try stuff and pick something where when you tell people, you say, oh, I'm offering plumbing services. They go, oh yeah, okay, a plumber. I know what a plumber is. I know why I would need a plumber. I've had to get a plumber in the past. I didn't have great experiences with them, but if I ever need a plumber again, I know you and I trust you, so maybe I'll get you next time. It's great when you say stuff and it resonates with people. You think, there's a potential business idea. It's great that you guys are in the chat. I was going to do a half an hour stream today, and we're already 45 minutes into it, and I still got a bunch of questions, so this is great. I saw at courses you're selling. Yes. Good morning, guys, says Youssef. I'm late today. I'm doing credit card. I was busy this morning. Now if you're watching the live, hope you are doing well, our teacher. Yes, I'm doing fine. I'm a little sick, but other than that, I'm doing fine. Greetings from Chile, capital Santiago, right? Chile is Santiago. Such a great channel. Thank you very much. And Yvonne says, I'm glad you started the YouTube channel to help us. I learned a lot from you. Thank you. Well, thank you for saying so, Yvonne, and I'm glad that it's helpful. Yeah, for the thing for YouTube is, I think a lot of people, they have, their big hurdle is filming themselves and then putting it out where somebody could see them. I think a lot of people, I just get a sense that a lot of people, that's not something they're willing to do. So that's what's holding them back. That's what prevents them from doing a YouTube channel, for example. I'm not sure if there's one overarching thing that prevents people from doing a side hustle. It might be, I know the financial element to it is one, because most people believe that you have to spend large amounts of money to get things off the ground. Certainly, if you pick certain things, if you want to do the restaurant idea, of course, there's no way around it. But there are many, many other things you can do that you could start for essentially zero money. You could take what you already do now, what you're already capable of doing, and just start doing some free promotion on social networking to say, hey, I'm here and I charge this much for my services. If you are interested, let me know, or contact me, or give me a call, or whatever. You could start doing that today. You could start doing that with what you have. You might even be able to get a customer today, depending on what it is and how you go about doing it. You don't have to spend any money on it. It just takes a little bit of effort. And you learn as you go. You try different things. You figure out some things that work and some things that don't work. And then you just tweak as you go and build it up. And as you learn more, you tend to get more successful. And if you've chosen something that's scalable, meaning that you can ramp it right up. Like, for example, if you get one customer that pays you, I don't know, $100 in a week, that's great. But would you be capable of doing 10 customers in a week that each pay you $100? Would you be capable of doing 100 customers in a week that each pay you $10? Right? Now, if you're doing a service as opposed to a product, you're doing a service, and let's say the service is your time. Like if you were a plumber, usually you charge by the hour, and so usually the way that goes is you sort of have a certain amount of time where you could have billable hours. You could work up to, say, I don't know, 20 hours a week as a plumber, charging an industry standard rate. But beyond 20 hours a week, you're maxed out. You can't do any more than that. So there's kind of a cap on how much you can do. Another option, for example, like we were talking about earlier, is like those courses and things. It's like digital products. There really is much less of a cap. You could sell one in a week. You could sell 100 in a week. It really doesn't require that much more of your time and effort. If you're doing customer service and things like that and interacting with all of your customers one-on-one, then it's less scalable. Then there's kind of more of a cap. But if you do it in such a way that your priority is making it scalable, then you could easily ramp that up and replace your day job. You could make a lot more money than in your day job if that's what you're wanting to go for. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to have to ramp this down in a minute. So if you have any questions, just throw them right into the chat. I'll take maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Thank you for saying such nice things there, Matthias. Yvonne says, I'm glad you started the YouTube channel to help us. Okay, I did that one. Nabil says, and everyone asks, when will open my own restaurant? Do you think this is a good move to switch career? Not much capital will be required, still need some. Okay, well, if you're opening a restaurant, but you don't need a lot of capital, okay. I don't fully understand how we're not talking about like a hot dog cart or something, right? But usually, like a restaurant is a brick and mortar type thing. Usually that takes more money because it's a physical business, right? If it's a restaurant where people eat in and you cook the food there, you prepare the food there on site, that's a more capital intensive idea, meaning you need a lot more money to start it. If somebody had the ambition to start a restaurant, what I would recommend is that they do it in easy stages and they validate each stage as they go. So for example, let's say you cook a specialty food. I don't know, maybe you make hot dogs, maybe you make curry, maybe you make whatever, right? And just, that's something that, you can make in your kitchen. And maybe you try and sell it to all your neighbors. Hey, I make cakes, or hey, I make chili, or, whatever. And your chili is so good that all your neighbors, you've done the free sample thing and they all love it. So they all buy it. They all will spend $20 paying for like a big chili dinner or something that you make just in your own house or apartment, right? Just a very small scale thing, just to validate it, just to see that, there is demand for this. People do like it, So if you wanted to get serious with it and do an actual serious business, the product is not going to be an issue because you validated the product. Everyone I've shown this product to, these are people that don't know me. They're not my family. They're not my friends, just neighbors, There's no pressure on them to have to say they like it when they don't, right? But they like it. Everyone that I've showed this to, they have a really good response. So you start with that, and then you validate the product. And then maybe the next step up is like, okay, you can make chili in your home or whatever. Maybe it's possible to sell the chili as a frozen product to a grocery store. You might have to get some health permits and, that kind of stuff. It's regulated. Maybe get your home kitchen inspected. Maybe there's local laws that allow that if you get it inspected properly and blah, blah. So you're investing a little bit of money to do that, but it's still kind of safe because you're going with a product that you've already validated. And, you're just sort of having your first commercial customers, and your first commercial customers will be the local supermarket, or grocery store or whatever, right? So, you're validating that, like, okay, people are willing to pay for this and it does sell when it gets in the supermarket, something like that. So then, if that's fine, then you can open a location, a physical location where it's not a restaurant. You don't have tables and waiters and that, but maybe you do delivery. Okay. So if you like this product that you get from the supermarket, we also deliver that hot at home as a full dinner, something like that. It's the next logical step, and you see if that works. And if that works, you get customers and it makes money. Then you do the full blown restaurant where it's an eat-in restaurant. You have to get loans from the bank and then you have to spend it on commercial property and equipping a kitchen and hiring people and all that stuff, right? So if that's your ambition, like your ambition is way up here, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, taking a big risk, I would find some way of breaking it into sort of little baby steps where each one is progressively more money, but it starts very cheap, and you validate each piece of the puzzle as you go. And you don't do the next step until you've figured out how to make the current step work. Something like that. And if you can't make it work, then you've saved yourself starting a full-blown restaurant that's going to fail, right? And then being in debt for many, many years, So that kind of thing. So hopefully that makes sense, Nabil. Thank you, Bill. I hope you feel better. Take care. Thank you, Yvonne. Yes, I'm about to. I have to wrap this up now. This is going to be half an hour. It's almost an hour. So thank you. There's 29 of you guys here. I hope you got some value from this. I'd like to do more of these. This is more of the kind of stuff that I enjoy doing. I tend to do this more with like business owners, so it's a little bit at a higher level, but I'd like to get into more of a general business discussion on my channel if people want to do that. So if you do, come back and ask your questions and we will get into it. So thank you very much. You guys are awesome. I'll be back hopefully on Monday to do another one of these if my health permits it. And I will see you all then. Thanks very much. Take care.